Hey, what is going on guys? Orhan here, and this is the HTC 10. So this phone came out earlier this year and people have made their decision whether they want to buy it or not. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to test this phone 6 months after its release. But believe it or not, I think you can tell a lot about a phone just by testing it a couple of months after its release. So without further ado, this is the HTC 10 6 months later. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is the design. Now when it comes to the HTC 10, we have that HTC look that we're familiar with from previous generations. And I never had a grudge against the typical HTC design, so I have no complaints here. I mean, it looks good and it feels good in the hand, and those two things, in my opinion, are the two most important things when it comes to a phone's design. So yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with the HTC 10's design. But when we dive into the specifics of the design, we have that clicky, power button, and tactile volume rocker. Other than that, you have the typical flagship features like USB Type-C and microSD card expansion. But another thing that's not really typical with the HTC 10 is the speaker system. Now the speaker system on the HTC 10 is something familiar to what we saw with the iPhone 7. There's a speaker grill on the bottom and a speaker grill implemented into the earpiece. One of them drives the sound and one of them is for the low frequencies. Now even though it sounds good, this in no way or shape replaces the legendary stereo front-facing speakers that we had from HTC in previous generations. And another plus is that it has a headphone jack. Yeah, not something that we're going to be able to take for granted much longer. But yeah, it's still there. And the last thing is the home button, which is also a fingerprint sensor. This time around, HTC decided to go with a capacitive home button instead of a home button that actually clicks. And I won't be surprised if this is the route that many other manufacturers will be going down in several months to come when we have the new flagships that are coming out. And it also has the back and multitasking capacitive buttons, similar to what we see with the Samsung Galaxy series. So yeah, overall the design on the HTC 10 is pretty good. I, for one, have no complaints at all. I think it's a spectacular design, even though they've been having the same design for previous generations. Like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It looks good and it feels good, and I think those two things really say a lot about the design of a phone. Next up is the display. We have the 5.2-inch Quad HD display covered in Corning Gorilla Glass 3. Now, even though this is a Quad HD display, when I was inspecting it and viewing it, I didn't really see the sharpness and vividness that I see on other Quad HD panels like we have from Samsung and like the Moto Z we saw earlier this year. I just didn't see the vividness and the colorful display that we see from other Quad HD panels, like I said. But yeah, it is a Quad HD panel. It looks beautiful, but it doesn't really match with the rest of the competition. But all in all, it's an average Quad HD panel. Now next up is performance. Now we have the typical flagship specs here. We have the Snapdragon 820 with the Adreno 530 GPU along with 4 gigs of RAM, packed with a 3000 mAh battery, and it comes in 32 or 64 gig variants. And like I said, it is expandable up to 256 gigs via microSD card. But yeah, day-to-day use with the HTC 10 was pretty good. It definitely felt as smooth as something like the Galaxy S7 or the Nexus 6P. So this guy runs HTC's Sense UI, and this is probably my favorite Android skin of all time. Now that says something within itself because I don't really like any Android skins from other manufacturers because of the fact that it doesn't really look good, but the HTC Sense UI and just a really good alternative to stock Android in my opinion. But again, since this is Android, you are welcome to go to the Play Store and download some themes if you want that stock look. And last up is the camera. A 13 megapixel shooter capable of shooting 4K video at 30 FPS. Now off the bat, this is not the best camera on a smartphone by any means. In fact, it's pretty mediocre in terms of image and video quality. But if you can get it on the right settings, it does take a pretty good picture. So yeah, the camera is in a solid B to B plus territory. So yeah, this is a pretty average camera, and if cameras are important to you in smartphones, this is probably not your first choice. And yeah, that's basically it. Just my quick thoughts and impressions on the HTC 10 and how it performed during the time that I used it. If you like this video, be sure to leave it a thumbs up. My name is Orhan, and I'll see you guys in the next one.